Okay, we're moving on to section 4.4, and we're looking at how do you factor ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, so we're still factoring. The only difference here is we have a coefficient in front of the x squared. It's going to complicate matters. Okay, because we can't simply look at this factoring like this and say, okay, what multiplies to get this that adds up to this? It just doesn't work. Okay, so there's two methods we're going to show you on factoring this. One is the guess and check process, and the second is factoring by grouping. Okay, so on this first one, we want to factor this into two binomials. Okay, so if I'll do the guess and check process first here on this one. So when I guess and check, I have to determine, okay, when I FOIL, I multiply this times this and I get this first term. So how many different ways can I multiply to get 5x squared? Well, this one's easy because there's only one way to multiply to get 5. 5 times 1. Okay, so there's only one way to get x squared is x times x. So this is going to be 1x times 5x. It's the only way I can multiply to get 5x squared. Okay, now these last two terms have to multiply to get a positive 6. Okay, now there's more than one way to get 6. I've got 1 times 6 or 2 times 3. Okay, this is where the guessing part of it comes in. Now, when you notice that the middle term is negative and this is positive, it's just like the other section. Both of my products have to be negative because a negative times a negative is a positive, adds up to a negative. Okay, so now I need to guess which combination do I want to try. So let's just first try the -1 and a -6 and see what we get. So that's the guess part. Now the check part comes in where we check our inside terms, the OI part of FOIL, and our outside terms, we add those up to see if we get the middle term. So in this case I get -5x, and this is a -6x. Add that up, I get -11x. So that doesn't work. Okay, so now one thing I can do is I can switch these and put the 6 over here and the 1 here. Well, now I'm going to get -30x and a -1x. That's not even close. Okay, so the 1 and the 6 are out. Let's try the 2 and the 3. This gives me a -10x, and this gives me a -3x. That's -13. That doesn't work. So, switch them again. Put the 3 over here, and the 2 here. -15 and a -2 adds up to -17. So that's the one that's going to work, and you can multiply it out just to check. Okay? So that's guess and check. Sometimes that works best, especially when it's easy to see what multiplies to get this term and what multiplies to get this term. There's not a lot of different possibilities. Guess and check's a good way. Factoring by grouping is the other way. Factoring by grouping will always get you the right answer, and there's no guessing, but it's a little bit of a longer process. Okay, so let's do the same problem. Let's go with factoring by grouping. Okay, so when I factor by grouping, I have to do a kind of a modified diamond problem. I need to multiply 6 times 5, so the A and the C gets multiplied, and that's my product. The -17 is my sum. I have to solve and figure out what multiplies to get 30 that adds up to -17. Okay, so if it's positive and negative, again, they both have to be negative. That's going to give me -2 and a -15, I believe. Okay, so that's the first step. The second step is to rewrite this with this is my x terms now. So you got a 5x squared minus 2x minus 15x plus 6. Okay, they still add up to this -17, and it doesn't really matter which order you put them in, but it looks like that. Okay, now we do the factor by grouping part. We're going to factor something out of each part of this. Okay, so when I look at this, the only thing I can factor out is an x. X times 5x minus 2 is still 5x squared minus 2x. Now what goes into 15 and 6? It's going to be 3, but I'm going to factor out a -3 because what's going to happen is I'm going to get a 5x minus 2. Let's see, negative 15, and that's going to be a plus 6. Okay, if this works right, these two should be the same. Okay, because now what I'm going to do is I have two terms here. I'm going to factor out the 5x minus 2 from each term, and that's going to leave me with the x minus 3. Okay, so notice that's my solution here. Same thing I got here, even though they're in different orders, doesn't really matter. Okay, so let's move on to this one. Now, you can do the guess and check process. I think everybody, you can kind of understand how to do that. So let's do this one using the factoring by grouping. Okay, so diamond problem. This times this is negative 21. This is a positive 20. Two numbers that multiply here. Now, it might be hard to see, but one thing that always multiplies by a number is 1 times that number. It's got to be negative. That's going to work there. So I got a 3x squared minus 1x plus 21x minus 7. That's how I write that. So this becomes our x terms that go here. Okay, now I'm going to factor an x out. And then 7 goes into both these. And lo and behold, these two are the same, so I factor those out. And I get that. Okay. One more example here. Now here's where guess and check might be difficult because the A term has two possibilities. You could get a 2x and a 2x, or a 1x and a 4x. Okay, so you might be there for a while trying to guess and check and get the right answer. But if you use the factoring by grouping, you'll eventually get there right away. So let's try this one with grouping again. 5 times 4 is 20. This is 12. So what multiplies to get 20 that adds up to 12? If you can't figure it out right away, you can always write out the factors of 20. 1 times 20, 2 times 10, 4 times 5. Which of those adds up to 12? 2 times 10. Okay, so we've got 4x squared plus 2x plus 10x plus 5. Okay, so what goes into both of these? Looks like I can factor a 2x out of both of those, and that gives me a 2x plus 1. And then a 5 goes into both of those. That gives me a 2x plus 1. So factor the 2x plus 1. And then that leaves me with the 2x plus 5. Those are my factors. Okay. Here's one more. Let's try this one real quickly. 2 times 4 is 8. That's a 9. So that's going to be a 1 times 8 is 8. Adds up to 9. So you got a 4x squared plus 1x plus 8x plus 2. Factor an x out of both of those. And then 8 and 2, so a 2 can factor out of those. And that ends up being the same, so you factor the 4x plus 1, and then the x plus 2 is left. Okay. Last one here. Now, one thing to notice here, before I even start, I see this and I see a bunch of even numbers. I know that something can factor out of each term. So no matter what type of factoring you're doing, you always look to see if there's a greatest common factor that factors out of each term. Okay? So 12, 28, 24, 4 factors out. So if I factor the 4 out, I get 3x squared minus 7x minus 6. Okay? That's going to make my life easier because now I can factor this. And this is going to factor into binomials. Let's try guess and check here. 3x squared, I know it's an x and a 3x. How do I multiply to get 6? 1 times 6 and 3 times 2. Let's try the 3 and the 2 first. One has to be negative, one has to be positive because this is negative. So let's check. You got a negative 9 and a positive 2. That adds up to 7, negative 7. So that works. So make sure you factor something out first. All right, let's move on to solving equations. Solving quadratic equations. Okay, this is the same as the last section. If I can factor this into two binomials instead of each part equal to 0, I can solve these. Okay. So let's do this one first. Let's do factoring by grouping. 3 and a negative 8. Do the diamond, so that's negative 24 and a positive 10. Okay, so what multiplies to get negative 24 that adds up to 10? I think it is 2 and negative 2 and 12. Okay, so let's go 3x squared minus 2x plus 12x minus 8. Okay, so what factors out of these? Just an x. And then looks like 4 factors out of those. So now I've got the 3x minus 2 and the x plus 4. Now we have to take it one step further because we need to use the zero product property and set each part equal to 0. So when I set 3x minus 2 equals 0 to solve it, I got to add 2 to both sides. I should have given myself some more room. Divide both sides by 3. So I get x equals 2/3. For that part, this one's a lot easier. It's going to be x equals negative 4. But that's that one. Okay, now look at this mess. This one looks complicated. But let's see what happens when I try to get everything over to one side. So I'm going to add 14x to both sides. And I'm going to add 48 to both sides. I get 3x squared plus 36x plus 108 equals 0. Okay, so the first step, we always have to get everything to one side. Now notice, 3 goes in every term, so I better factor that out of each term first. Then I get that. Okay, now there's no coefficient here, so this is the simple factoring. Just two numbers that multiply to get 36 that add up to 12. This is actually a perfect square trinomial because 6 squared is 36 and 6 plus 6 is 12. There's going to be an x plus 6 and an x plus 6. Now, because they're both the same, I get one solution of x equals negative 6 in that case. Okay. One last problem here. What I'd like you to do is try that one and bring it to class and see if you can solve that one either by guess and check or by the grouping. Now this one would probably not be very easy guess and check wise because there's more than one way to get this and there's more than one way to multiply to get negative 15. So the best bet would be to do the diamond problem and the factoring by grouping. So try that one and bring it to class.